Welcome back all to my channel. I'm going to continue on with the Series 2A front axle rebuild. Diff's already done, painted, ready to go, and now I'm just working on basically servicing the two ends, the steering ends with the swivels and so on. Now this is obviously the short end. You can see it's still pretty much all bolted together. Obviously I've taken out, see the hub assembly there, but stub axle is still in place along with the entire swivel assembly. However, I've already taken off, started pulling apart the other side. So this is the entire unit here. So what I've done is I've put an order in for a swivel rebuild kit, which will come with obviously new seals and so on and so forth, Railco, bush, etc, etc. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to pull this unit apart. I'm going to take the brake assembly apart as well, and obviously service the hub assembly and so on. I've got a new distance piece coming in the kit as well. This is an example of the one that I removed from the rear stub axle, and these little notches there that you can see on all four ends here, effectively it's a cold chisel that I've punched through, and that was sufficient enough for it to pop out and to be replaced. Right, so just to give you an example, these are threaded, so there's no kind of bolt at the other end. So you see how that will now come off. I'll just remove this pipe, but yeah, nothing too difficult there. Right, so I've taken that out. What I've done is I've just put it all back together. So again, the best way to do it is to take the hoses off before you take the brakes out of the backing plate, because that'll support that when you're trying to force these nipples loose. And also you need to take that one off because it won't fit through the hole. So you effectively need to take all the lines off, then take the bolts off, and then you can slide out the pistons. But I've left it like this so I know in what order they go. And so now we're left with a pretty much a blank backing plate that I can now clean off. Next step I'll do now is to remove the distance piece here, because that one's worn, and so the reason why I want to remove that is so that I can also clean up the unit properly. And so effectively just want to have everything pretty much ready to go for when the bits and pieces come along, and I'm able to then start a rebuild, and I'll be able to then use a cold chisel and start tapping it on the edges. Now one of the things that you need to be careful of when you're doing this is that I'll grab something so I can point at it. So you've got your distance piece here, that's your distance piece here, this piece here, but then you've got this little shoulder. I don't know if you can see it. Right, the shoulder there, that's not part of this. So when you put your chisel, you don't want to put it right up against the shoulder, you want to bring it back forward a bit and chisel it from about there. So let's try this again. So here's my chisel. As I said beforehand, you don't bring it right to the edge because you would hit the shoulder of this stub axle here. You want to chisel it about there. So I've hit it now a couple of times, and you can see how it's now loosened up. Actually I only needed to tap it 3 times really. Right, so these have been cleaned up. I've actually put a bit of grease around the outer bearing shield just to keep it safe from rust and so on. So the next step I'm going to do here is just put a bit of rust converter on these, and then they're pretty much ready to paint. Cleaned up all the nuts and bolts as well, got rid of all the crud from them. So yeah, so far so good. Right, next thing I need to do here is dismantle this entire swivel housing unit. I've gone ahead already and started removing the seal and the retainer. In a previous video I showed you the axle and the half shaft that came out of this, and you will remember that if you've seen the video, that basically 2 of the 4 sides of the universal, the needle bearings were missing. It was completely flogged out. Well, they're now falling out of here. So as I move this, I'm getting them all popping back out. So that's where they went to. I was wondering where it was because I couldn't see it when I pulled the axle out, but now obviously they're all inside here, located on the bottom here where this bearing is. Anyway, so idea is to undo obviously these lock tabs here, undo the nuts, and we should be able to remove that, bearing in mind that that's the bearing end. Oh God, some more of those are falling down from the top there. You can see them. There's another one there. So you can see some more down in the housing here. Anyway, so undo those, and then of course do the same for this side. Undo the tabs and then remove the bolts from here. There should be some shims stuck under here, so it's just a matter of removing everything gently, cleaning and inspecting, and then giving the whole thing a good wash. Something that I suspected was going to happen is these nuts and bolts are torqued down, which means that trying to take them off like this makes it very challenging because you have to hold it so it doesn't spin. That's why if you're going to do a job like this and you've got the entire unit already bolted onto the axle housing, it's probably better to leave it on there so you've got the weight of the axle, the differential, etc. to help, or else you're going to come up to a similar problem like I've got. But anyway, I'll persist and see whether or not I can take that out. Unfortunately, I had to resort to the using the air gun. It was the only way. I hate using the air gun in a lot of situations because of obviously the brute nature of an air gun, but anyway, it's the only way I could deal with it. So now I'll just remove these. That one's of course stuck. They're not ideal, but well, at least we've got them loose now. Right, so now that I've loosened it, this has become incredibly loose now, which is to be expected because I've taken all the tension off here, off the top bush here. So slowly I can actually start removing this pin. You know, doing it one-handed, I suspect that this is going to actually fall apart. So what I might do is, first things first, I'll just lie it down. Like that. Sorry for the shaky camera work, but I'll just slowly pull this out. There we go. Oops, and here are the shims that I was talking about here. So I'm going to retain those. Try not to damage them. Okay, so grab that as a unit, put it up here on the table. So that's taking care of that end, and this end here should be pretty much the same, although I might need to apply a bit of pressure because, let's just try taking this out. Here we go. So I just lift out, and I'll put that one up here. And pretty much here's the bottom bearing, which will need to be replaced, hopefully with the kit. There it is there. Ooh, gritty. Okay, so with the bearing out, as I said, very, look at this. Alright, there's a parts and shards of the needle bearings from the universal coming out of this bearing here. So this is absolutely crunched everything. You can see all that crud. So that's as a result of that universal failing and depositing, let me grab all this here, depositing all this mash of steel needle bearings, etc., all over the bottom, just where the bearing happens to sit, yeah? So there you go, heaps of it. Popped the seal out, and now that entire arm comes out. O-ring here will need to be replaced, and all that good stuff. So we now effectively have a bare bones swivel housing ready to be cleaned up. Oh, look at that, still more. Everywhere, all over the base here. Now you get the idea. Okay, so what I'm going to do is now focus on cleaning up this, the actual swivel. I'm going to leave this bearing in there for the moment and see whether or not that's reusable. And as I said, just give everything a bit of a nice clean up and wait for the swivel rebuild kit to arrive. Then I can start putting it all back together. But you can see how it's not really that difficult or that complicated. So I'll continue on with the cleanup, and I'll see you on the other side.